There is a mystery on this earth that is older than mystery itself. A missing moment in our human evolution that has lasted more than 50,000 years. It is a time before time, and a time that will begin and end again. And this time of times is called the end of the earth. The civilizations of the earth are older than we know, and its inhabitants were greater than anything we could ever comprehend. They who were here before us were a strange and superior species. They were called human beings, and they looked just like you and I. They walked and talked like you and I, but they were far more intelligent than we are, and even more humbling. They were better than we are. Their knowledge was greater, and their gods were greater, and under the flesh of their skins, even their hearts were greater than our own. The years of the earth are many, but the days of man on it are few. The civilizations of mankind will always rise and fall, and so too does their knowledge. On the earth, more than 50,000 years ago, a vibrant and thriving civilization lived, and in an instant, life and everyone in it completely vanished. The memory of what was is entirely wiped away, and the earth is completely sterilized and cleansed of all knowledge of what was before. Every trace of mankind and its inhabitants are meticulously eradicated. It is called the E-cycle, and it is more than the cycle of life, and it is in fact the cycle of the earth. Mankind has walked this earth for more than 400 million years, and when we walked, talked, and breathed this beautiful plane of existence, we were all ultimately wiped out. In time, a new earth would begin, and a new life of mankind would again flourish. And in this new time of earth, there were lords, gods, and Christs, and the hearts of the children of men were beautiful and free. However, the dark days of the end would once again return, and the life of all mankind would utterly and perfectly be wiped out. There have been more than 30,000 versions of this earth, all beginning and ending in 5 to 10,000 year increments. Thousands of human civilizations rising, dying, and then rising again, only to die again. A cycle of life and death where the earth is ever changing and yet staying exactly the same. Cities, nations, and even continents of billions of people inexplicably disappearing without a trace. Today we have come out of the age of stones and into the age of technology and understanding. We are able to plot the movement of the planets and see deep into the great distant galaxies of the cosmos. We believe that we are at the height of intelligence and that there was none like us on the face of the earth. We consistently measure our new technological breakthroughs as the first ever created by man. We label all of our discoveries as a first for mankind, or never before seen on the earth. We all believe that we are the first to do anything technological or marvelous, and yet we have only left our savage beginnings a mere 5,000 years ago. It is a conundrum that each of us should ponder. We have no knowledge of anything that happened past 5,000 years on this earth. And as to our own future, we are absolutely clueless. We find old bones, shards of pottery, and carbon-dated signatures which tell us that there was a world here before our own. 30,000 years ago, a world of men, women, and children, living, loving, and thriving in life. And yet there is not one thing left to us that tells us what happened to them and what ended their earth. Our best science tells us that more than 5,000 years ago, we were all bare-skin-wearing savages, uneducated, spear-wielding brutes, who were nothing more than dumb and dull-witted cave dwellers. There could be nothing on earth as far away from the truth as this. Everything we have been taught of our history of man no longer exists, because, believe it or not, it never did. Our rise to intelligence created a rush to judgment and a flawed and arrogant story of our history. This miseducation is more than just a crime against our intellect. It is also a crime against humanity. It is greater than any other crime on the earth, because within the frame and structure of our world are heartbreaking and desperate clues left for each and every one of us by those who died over 45,000 years ago. Horrifying clues left by those who saw their end coming and yet also knew that there would be new human beings coming to this earth after them. They left these magnificent intellectual paintings for the innocent and unknowing humans who would follow after them. They made each of these back-breaking and heart-rendering paintings for only one purpose. They made them for us. You think you know this story, and you're sure you have heard it all before. A story of cavemen and cavewomen writing on the walls of an ancient cave. An unsophisticated portrait of their daily life, and a life that is not very interesting at all. And yet, it is history. Prehistoric history. However, I caution you, because all that you know of history no longer exists, because that history never was. There is a holy and unnerving prehistoric story being told for the first time to each and every one of us. And this story was written in blood by those who came before us. It is they who were here and who survived just long enough to see what happens to all of us at the end of the world. They knew that they who came to end the earth would afterward cleanse it of every record of mankind, leaving no trace of anything that survived or anything that was human. These who survived ran into caves and took refuge there for as long as they could. And what they did after was the greatest and most beautiful thing any human being has ever done for another. They began painting. They recreated anything and everything they could to warn us about what happens when the earth dies. They did this knowing that the earth would be scoured of any trace of mankind. But these brave survivors created a hidden SOS message that could hide in plain sight, an ingenious communication, and every new earth and every new human being would see. Today we call this creation a cave painting, and its name is consistently associated with savagery and ancient diminished capacity. We see these cave paintings of horses, cows, hunters, aliens, and strange symbols of all sorts as some kind of fantasy by the prehistoric simpleton. We see it as a caveman fantasy or a slice of life depicting hunting and predation as they knew it. Our view of these cave paintings indicates that their final messages have completely escaped all eyes undetected, both enemy and friendly. Sadly, this overlooked, precious work of love and loss of life was made to be seen and deciphered by the next human beings who would come to this earth. They were made for us. These cave paintings that are found all over the world range in age from 3,000 years old to more than 40,000 years old. And unfortunately, we are all unaware of the fact that each of these well-detailed cave paintings were created by an artist who was in fear, who was in pain, and who was sobbing and crying uncontrollably while painting this intricate letter of letters. He and she, who painted so beautifully and so intelligently, created a painted work with a paint that would last not for 30 years, but instead with a paint that would last more than 30,000 years. This fact alone completely escapes all of us, and it has since the beginning of time as we know it. Contrary to what we have been taught, these were not cavemen, but instead they were technologically brilliant, and they came from a very sophisticated and highly intelligent society. Their choice of paint and placement clearly suggests that they had a full grasp of art, geometry, astronomy, science, and experience in transmitting discreet and clandestine communications. They were in fact just like us, and as smart as us, and surely even smarter than us. What they reveal with each painting suggests that they were more intelligent than we thought. They have not seen the faces of any of us, and yet they knew that we would come, and they knew that there would be a world after their own. They left these superior works of art in hallowed caves, and with each layer of paint, they prayed that one day we would see them, and more importantly, one day we would understand them. Sadly, these hopes and prayers were their last. Today their tears are gone, but their work is not forgotten. In 45,000 years, we can finally read them. The hope of their work is born in our age and in our days, because within each painting is a knowledge that is more important to mankind than anything else on this entire planet. It is sure that after a series of paintings, the artist was undoubtedly discovered, and as a result surely lost his life. But within each painting is an encrypted and hidden message that warns each and every one of us of what is to come. An unseen coat of paint that is so clever and so intelligent that even those with high intelligence completely dismiss it as the writings of a prehistoric hunter-gatherer. And yet it is in fact a perfection of end-time knowledge that is displayed openly and freely, and not one individual with high intelligence can detect its secret. Why? The painting's messages are protected by one of the most sophisticated encryption techniques ever seen. And once you begin to understand the message, your heart will nearly give out on you. All that was is no more, and all that follows is the beginning of our history. It begins here with a 30,000-year-old painting of what is simply a bull running through a field. Another bull follows in a circular pattern behind it. Although it appears to be a simple painting of a bull, closer inspections will reveal peculiar iterations of pattern which reveal that there is more to the painting than what is obvious. The bull is massive compared to the other animals beneath it. The bull also has strange dots going around its eyes and down its snout. The reason this painting escapes our intellect is because we have dismissed these peoples and their brains as underdeveloped. However, if you look closer at the bull, with the strange dots running around his eyes and down its snout, you will find that these are not dots. They are actually stars. The reason the bull is so much larger than all the other animals is because this bull is above all animals on the earth. Because believe it or not, this is actually the constellation of Taurus the bull. It is a heavenly bull that rotates around the earth, and if you look closely, you will see the stars running around its eyes and down its snout. It is identical to the constellation of Taurus. The bull that follows it in the upper right indicates that this constellation pattern is circular and that it rotates around the earth. If you have any doubt to the validity of this astounding discovery, consider this cave painting showing the same constellation of Taurus the bull. However, in this painting, the clandestine intent of the painter is unmistakable. Notice that this bull has horns that do not curl up, as most bulls do, but instead, they seem to stretch out into two perfect lines, almost as antennae. If you look to the constellation of Taurus, you will see that this bull's star points stretch out in the exact same way. They are straight and they are deliberate lines that stretch as far beyond the bull's horns to create the constellation's signature boundary. However, this animal and its design has far-reaching implications. Notice the bull's outline and boundary, and notice also it is the exact opposite direction of the former constellation of Taurus. This knowledge, when revealed in the end, will stagger the mind. Our prehistoric bearskin-wearing and spear-throwing forefathers were not, and they left these messages so that one day we would understand, and understand we must, because our very lives depend on it. This beautiful and blood-soaked 30,000-year-old cave painting of a bison bull is also a representation of the constellation Taurus the bull. Within this painting is an even greater knowledge than the others, because this painting was made for those of us who will always believe the opposite of the truth, the naysayers, the doubters, and those who will only be convinced by their own mind as to the validity of anything and everything. This painting shows the constellation of Taurus, but if you look closer, you will see a bright light glowing just above its shoulder. If this bull is the constellation of Taurus, then this well-lit area must also represent something else that is found in space. This deduction would be logical, and it would be also correct. This star-like pattern above the bull's shoulder is in fact one of the most well-known constellations in the world. It is the constellation that rests within Taurus the bull, and it is the constellation of the Pleiades. It is a holy and sacred constellation of stars that has been handed down to every generation of man for over 5,000 years. This knowledge is found all over the world, and it was left to us by those who from the stars came. The Pleiades sits right above the shoulder of the bull, and in every constellation It is an exact match. Believe it or not, our end is not found on the earth, but instead, it rests in the stars. Our understanding of these cave paintings are more important to our survival than anything else on the earth. And if you doubt these claims, ask yourselves, how did savages who had barely mastered the use of fire at the same time chart every star in our galaxy? Time is of the essence, and time we have little left. This 30,000-year-old painting on its face looks to be a large hyena. Most scholars believe this because of its long tail and the spots found on its body. However, there has never been a hyena with spots only on its shoulders and on its face. This is actually a prehistoric version of what the bear used to look like 45,000 years ago. The bear was large and was also known to have a long tail. Today's version of the bear does not. This bear has spots and specks on it, and believe it or not, the specks on its fur are in fact stars. And this is the constellation of the Bear. We know it as the Big Dipper, and it is one of the most famous and easily identified star constellations in the northern hemisphere. If you look deeper at the painting, the story and the confirmation is even more conclusive. This 35,000-year-old cave painting shows horses running alongside the constellation of Taurus the Bull. And believe it or not, the great horse that runs in the sky alongside the bull is called Pegasus. It is a mythical winged horse that travels the cosmos beside Taurus the Bull. Every stylized and artistic animal represents a coded message for the new incarnation of man on the earth. A rhino is just a rhino until you see a new, perfect 360-degree curvature of its horns, and then suddenly it becomes something else. It shows us something else, and it reveals wisdom. This well-encoded message actually gives us a complete understanding, and the understanding is that these animals are in space, and they border planets, stars, and suns. Our cave painters display a supreme understanding of the skies, the stars, and the constellations. However, your hearts will falter as we begin to go deeper and deeper into the cave of a people whom we all believed to be Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon brutes. Each of these cave paintings show us how they saw the cosmos, and each painting provides a Rosetta Stone for our understanding. A bull, a horse, a bear, or any painted animal that is found to have specks or dots painted within it means that it is more than just an animal, and it is in fact a star constellation or cluster of stars that is in our Earth's sky or also found somewhere out in space. This decryption method allows us to peer into the minds of the prehistoric human being. Understanding this codex will in no way give you peace, because this cave's knowledge is very, very deep. Upon the walls there are pictures of colored hands and more hands. They all represent human beings of every race, both male and female. But look closely at these ubiquitous, strange, and peculiar hands. These particular hands are not like the others, and they all have star dots just below their fingers. Dots and specks that indicate that this is a constellation of stars within our cosmos. This handprint is unique, as the dots are surrounding the hands and are all fiery red, which indicates something in our cosmos is near its grasp. a painting humble and true, and its knowledge is staggering, because as we go farther and farther into space, we find a hand, and not just any hand, a very special hand, one surrounded with white clouds and also fiery red stars. It is a hand unlike any hand we've ever seen before, and it is singular in its importance, because we call this stellar pulsar wind nebula the hand of God. It is both stars and clouds, and right within its grasp is a red, fiery hot constellation of stars and gas and clouds. Unbelievably, we have recently discovered this constellation, and it is so far away from Earth that it is impossible for prehistoric man to have ever seen it. Ever to have seen it without this. This image is only visible to us via the very powerful Hubble telescope. How is this possible? How can this be? This is the singularity of enlightenment, and this is where we begin to accept the impossible, the unbelievable, and ultimately the inevitable. Paleolithic, Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, ape-man, and caveman. And yet 40,000 years ago, they saw the same star constellations we see today. They saw the same star patterns we see, and they named them after the exact same animals that we named them after today. And now they see the hand of God, a sight impossible to see without evolution and a very high technology. More importantly, it is the same sight we see today, and yet 40,000 years ago, this technological race of superhumans were wiped out. At the understanding of this knowledge, many of us will retreat and succumb to a disease known as cognitive dissonance. Its symptoms appear when faced with a knowledge that is so intense and so overpowering to the mind that the brain will suddenly retreat into a previous and happier cognitive disposition. A time that existed right before the moment where you understood it. You will say, they are no different from any other ancient culture we've ever seen. And you will say to yourself, this couldn't possibly be true. All who feel this way will be utterly broken. For what comes next is the end of every intelligent doubter in the world. Because what comes next will completely stun the brain into paralysis. The cave paintings not only show that prehistoric man could see deep into space, it also shows something else even more unbelievable. These paintings show that they could also see the Earth from space. A highly intelligent being will function on multiple levels of intelligence, and thus one message sent will be built upon several hidden messages, which to the uninitiated will appear to be one innocuous, benign painting of a farm animal. Nevertheless, a close inspection of each painting will reveal several messages layered within each color of paint. We see Taurus the bull, and we know it is a star constellation. But laying all across each star constellation are splashes of yellow and golden paint. Look again. Closer. Closer. These are not splashes of artistic styling, and to the contrary, these are actually land formations, pieces of our earth as it looks from space, continents, countries, city-states, and favored lands. How we know this is by the uniformity of its presence in each painting around the world, and what reveals its code is found here. Consider this painting. You see the land mass beneath the constellation of stars. Look closer. This is a twig or blade of grass. Notice its color and its uniformity in relation to land and earthbound animals, as opposed to starlight animals. It matches the exact color of land in every single cave painting around the world. This is the color of the cave painting. This is actually a satellite image of our world. Notice the color is an exact match, and land in every cave painting is the exact same color as our satellite imagery. The stonework of our dull-witted, unevolved forerunner to our current perfection of evolution reveals not that they were ignorant, but instead, we are. 35,000 years ago, Cro-Magnon man created a crude painting in rock that is seen as a futile attempt at artwork. We now know that these highly intelligent human beings were sending us an encrypted message that we would only understand on the day that we would evolve. Look closer. Closer. This is a view of the world from above. Notice how small man is in each of these cave paintings. In order for man to be seen this way, it must be from a very, very high vantage point. They are showing us the way our land looks from above. And although our intelligence tells us that this is just a painting, look very closely. Notice that all the animals seen seem to have white spots underneath or splashes of white near or around them. When you understand why, you will know it's over. You see these juvenile cave paintings of animals and then quickly dismiss them as the markings of our uninteresting progenitors. But wait, look closely. Although it is as boring as the others, this painting reveals our connection to our distant relative, and it proves what is impossible. This is not a cave painting. Although it is identical to all cave paintings around the world, its revelation is found in understanding why it's exactly like all the others. It's exactly like all the other cave paintings because these are actually satellite images taken from space, and the specks of white are actually the animals themselves. They're found in every single cave painting, and we always wonder why there's splashes of white. The white is actually the animal. The black image, which we believe to be the painting, is merely a shadow created by the sun. It is identical to images painted in caves, and this is how and why they painted such boring images, because they knew one day we would understand. The cave painter was not painting what he saw of his daily life. He was painting several satellite images, and they were painting them all over the world for one reason and one reason only. They were painting them for us. Each painting screams from deep into the cave, and it says, "Listen to us, and know that we were here, and we were just like you. Please, hear us. Please understand. We must understand them because these satellite images are tomorrow's cave paintings. They carefully chose caves for their clandestine messages because the cave simulates that which cannot be captured on film: depth and terrain. The rocky surface of each cave creates valleys, ridges, and mountains. And why this is so important is because this story will reveal to all of us that these cavemen and women were technological, and these images are created from satellite photography. Consider this 35,000-year-old painting and notice the rocky surface. Notice the white coloring running down its middle. This isn't white coloring. This is a message. This is Earth from above. And these hazy streaks of white are actually clouds. And these images can only be seen like this from space. Animals were used to identify star constellations. And believe it or not, they are also used to identify earthbound land formations. These are not cave paintings. These are satellite images. Cave paintings which not only reveal terrain, they also reveal geological imaging. Land and its formations from space is very important to whomever will come after us on Earth. Because in each Earth, our land formations and our races and cultural ethnicities will recreate them. We will again begin in one part of the world, and then with time, we will gradually spread across the world. We humans who were Asians in the next world will conquer Asia. We who are Africans will feel drawn to Africa. And as it is in the world, it will begin again, and in the next. This is why these paintings are so important, because in the end, it ends the same. This cave painting, taken from high above what appears to be cattle, is in fact our greatest clue to what happens to us in the end. The reason this painting of cows and bulls is so important to us is because these are not cows and bulls. They are actually stars, constellations, and more importantly, they also are countries and continents. From the earth, ancient man looked into the sky and saw stars, and they made animals to represent each star constellation. But they also did something else, more dramatic than any of us could ever imagine. While in space, looking upon the earth, in the darkness, our land formations light up. And from space, our earth looks like the sky. And in each city around the earth, it lights up. And what they did when they looked upon the earth, each country, each continent, each city-state, they made an animal to represent it. And if you look very closely at these bulls, you'll understand why they're the opposite direction of the constellation of Taurus the bull. They are pointing the opposite direction because these are not the constellation of Taurus the bull. They represent a star constellation of Taurus the bull that is found on the earth. It represents a country, a continent, or a city-state. It also represents a powerful clue as to why their world ended 20,000 years ago. It is a highly specific message encoded within the mundane. It is placed there with the hope that someone will come 50,000 years later who will understand. This particular bull tells us more about their end than anything else. And it also tells us where this bull is found. They use brilliant colors in this nearly 10,000-year-old cave painting to give us our greatest clue as to why and what kills us in the end. Notice the gold, red, blue, and yellow signatures among the rocky surfaces. These colors represent something that we are just now realizing that is a critical piece of our development and also the knowledge of our end. These brilliant colors represent satellite thermal imaging. They also reveal severe climate change, a geological record of a bull or landmass that was critical to our ancestors' understanding of the end. This land formation, however, has a very familiar appearance, and it also reveals a cycle of not only the rise and fall of man, but also the inescapable inevitability of repeating the same mistake over and over again. Notice the rocky terrain and its vibrant colors. And now, a geological image. This represents a continent and a nation, and its vibrant colors indicates superior knowledge. And now, a geological image. And now, a thermal image. It is unmistakable. 20,000 years ago, they were us. We are coming to the end of our journey as human beings, and these depictions, however outlandish you may think, are in fact a warning. Nevertheless, the display of technology is not confined to the magnificence of space and the macro lens of life. This cave painting is found on nearly every continent, and on its face, it appears to be a stylized depiction of a deer. But then, look again at the strange structure coming from its antlers. This structure is a strange and clearly audacious message sent to all of us. And this message completes the SOS transmission sent to our world. This geometric shape is unlike all other cave paintings, and this creation cannot be found in space or even on land. No, this particular object is not a grand and sprawling vision of creation, but is instead an intricate and complicated article that is very, very small. This symbol found coming out of the deer's head is actually a part of the synaptic structure of the human brain. Not only did they see the large bodies of the earth and the cosmos, they could also see the microscopic, the inner workings of the human being, animals, and insect. This symbol is in every living brain on this earth, and it is the most important symbol of all, because this buck represents man. And in the end, mankind is taken. Their world was our world, and what we are today, they were 45,000 years ago. And this knowledge of all knowledge finds us only in the end. And what comes next is inevitable. The ending of our world. The first man created on earth was created in Africa. And he who created us always returns to the ones he created first. The hands painted all over the world are a warning, which tells everyone who comes after them how the world ends. All signs of our end begin here. This is the most ubiquitous symbol ever created on this earth. It is found as a painting or as a carving, and it is in every country and every cave in the world. It is the last clue and the last warning given, and contrary to what the experts tell us, it does not mean galaxy, And it is not an alien message. It is actually a human message. And in the end of every world, it is the last message ever sent. And it is African. This ringed symbol, surrounded with wildlife and the hands of our ancestors, is actually called the Rings of Africa. Each handprint represents colors, peoples, and nations. In the end, our religions and our beliefs give way to living, dying, and fighting for each other as human beings. Africa, the place of our birth, is where we began, and it is also where it all ends. Civilization and technology rises and flourishes, and the varied races of human beings spread all across the globe. And then suddenly, and with very little warning, the earth and its every human inhabitant completely vanishes. Cities, nations, and even continents of billions of people inexplicably disappear without a trace. Our only clues to what happens in the end are found on the walls, hidden in old tunnels and caves. The greatest knowledge on earth disguised as a simpleton's ramblings or a dim-witted cave dweller's attempt at art. For 45,000 years, we have all believed that this is what we were and that this is where we came from. And even more humiliating, we also believed that this is what we look like. A history written and handed down to us by our most intelligent scholars, and also a history that never existed. Today we believe that we are at the height of human achievement. We now know that we aren't. We now know that they weren't the uninteresting, monotonous savages that we were taught. And sadly, after truly admitting this to oneself, we realize we are. They didn't look like this, and they never looked like this. Their world was highly educated and technological, and their works provide an understanding of supreme spirit and heart. They saw the end coming, and before they died, they did everything they could to tell the next civilization of human beings what happens at the end of the world. Each of these paintings carry an encrypted technological blueprint of the cosmos. And the reason they left these works to us is because they are the only things on this earth that can save us. Everything they left to us is a clue, and every painting and placement of it carries an encrypted message. All of the painted star constellations are hidden within a tunnel or cave. And the reason they did this is because in order to get to these constellations, we as humanity must enter caves. We lack the expertise and the length of years to make it to the Andromeda Galaxy, which is 2.5 million light years from the Earth. Then again, if you enter the right tunnel in space, you will get there in only a few months. Today we call these tunnels wormholes, and once in them they resemble caves. You will quickly pass from one constellation to another, and then suddenly you're there. It is science fiction and yet science fact. And how we know this is because this message comes from human beings who lived more than 40,000 years ago. They reached out to us from the past and crossed thousands of years of time to touch our hearts and give light to our eyes. They achieved what we achieved, and their technology of the past is the same technology we find so supreme today. Everything we're doing now, they did 45,000 years ago. And sadly, they were completely wiped out. Why? Because this is as far as we go as human beings. we reach a particular stage of development and understanding, and then we are taken from this earth. The religions of the world teaches that in the last days of the earth, we are all taken. This is true. But contrary to what the world teaches, the world does not end because man is evil. We are not taken from the earth because of our sins or transgressions against our brother. We are not taken for our misdeeds or our thefts or our murders. No. In the end, we are taken from the earth and from the tree of life for one reason and one reason only. And it is not for our sins and not for our transgressions. In the end, we are plucked from the tree of life and from the branches of our earth when our flesh has ripened with knowledge. It doesn't matter how hard we try or how hard we cry. We never go any further than this. No matter how great our tears, our journey as human beings ends. No matter what we do, there's nothing we can do to change it. Nothing except one thing. Our only hope, believe it or not, is found in Nazca, Peru. The Nazca lines were created specifically for this moment in our human evolution. Only now will we truly understand what is in the sand and the dirt. And now we must understand them, because the Nazca lines actually tells us how to save our earth. A sophisticated encrypted message of sand and dirt actually tells us what and where to go in order to save ourselves. Because in the lines of Nazca, there is the knowledge of the Stargate. The Stargate is real, and to enter into it is to cross millions of light years of space in an instant. A Stargate, a gateway into the cosmos, and finding it and mastering it is the next part of our human story. It is the hope of our God and the glory of our flesh. Because if we are wise enough to attain it, we will do what no other earth before us has ever done. Live. Nevertheless, in the sands of Nazca, near the Stargate, there is one thing that awaits us, and we must first find a way around it. Because one strange thing on the plains of Nazca is waiting for us to come. As soon as we get close to it, it will strike.